Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 3 of Driving Innovation in Insurance, a series of virtual panel discussions focusing on the impact of digital transformation on the insurance value chain. Our previous episodes helped us understand how technological innovations are creating a renewed insurance industry model with interesting insights from some of the most notable thought leaders in this domain. Here's a small preview into some of these discussions. Our discussion today will revolve mostly around the evolving role of actuaries in the digital era and how technology like AI and ML have fundamentally redefined actuarial work.
One critical thing that we keep in mind is, while this artificial intelligence or machine learning can give an output, is the actuary's core competencies is actually critical to review and interpret the outcome for the better decision making.
We've seen that advanced analytics and big data fundamentally are changing the actuarial work. And machine learning is really coming to the actuaries. Machine learning is different from traditional methods because it's data-driven. It's often difficult to interpret, but it complements classical actuarial methods.
There's a poll. This is my second poll. We are doing this to just make it interesting for all of our participants. The surprise is always fun. So the question is, what are some of your expectations from the technology team with respect to managing data and analysis? We asked you to share only 2 of the 4 options. The highest, 76%, I think, mentioned a unified platform for managing data and analytics. Again, 57% is capability to manage huge amounts of data. How insurers are leveraging AI and machine learning driven decision making to improve customer engagement.
Big challenge for all of the insurance companies worldwide. Everybody is talking about digital transformation, which will come definitely, but the reality still is that the traditional offline channels, so the agents, the brokers, the intermediates, they are the go-to persons. So, and this is exactly the journey that every single insurance company has to go through.
If you look at the framework right behind the whole GDPR and the Indian interpretation of the data privacy, it is finally around what's in it for me from a consumer standpoint, right? The personalization that we talk about, or n equal to 1, right? As long as we can deliver that, as an organization at each and every part of the value chain, at each and part of the journey, with a clear consent and unconsent, right? That's at the heart of it, right? Then the privacy piece is taken care of.
I would tend to agree with Saurabh on this point that we have taken to digital not by our first immediate voluntary reaction. It's been more on the rebound. But having said that, the way we have really scaled up over the last few years is very interesting.
Our question was, what are the primary reasons that your organization is not able to provide a great experience to your customer? We asked you to pick any 2 of the following choices. And 71% said customer 360 view. That's interesting. That's essentially saying that we're not able to have a complete view of the customer across different sort of touch points. And siloed processes. 53% also said siloed processes. So that was a quick glimpse into the first 2 episodes, and we are at our the last episode of our series, Driving Innovation in Insurance. So that was a quick recap. Now, you can catch up on the detailed discussion by clicking on the link available in the message box on the right of your screen. There's a chat box, and my colleagues will be pasting the link, and you can see the rest of the previous 2 episodes there. And if you have to sum up the last 2 episodes, our speakers clearly highlighted 3 critical themes to transformation. First, of course, cohesion and collaboration between processes which will drive better customer experience. Second, digital is all about getting the relevant context at the point of decision. And third, regulators are evolving from being prescriptive to assessing the need and rationale behind decisions made by an insurer. So today we conclude the series with the third and the last episode titled Enhancing the Digital IQ of an Insurer. This discussion today will revolve around how insurers are adopting AI and ML capabilities across the insurance value chain. How are they enabling operational decisions with context and transparency? What guides their decision between buying specialized solutions versus in-house development? And lastly, how are AI and ML processes getting institutionalized so that they can be monitored, explained, and governed? Joining me today are some esteemed thought leaders from the insurance industry, including Mr. Manu Lavanya, Director and Chief Operations Officer at Max Life Insurance Company, Mr. Mehmood Mansoori, President, Shared Services and Online Business at HDFC Ergo, Mr. Gautam Datta, Chief Information and Digital Officer at Bajaj Allianz Life Insurance Company, Mr. Eswar Natarajan N, President and COO at Kotak Mahindra General Insurance, Ms. Pallavi Malani, Managing Director and Partner at the Boston Consulting Group, India, and finally, Mr. Deepak Ramanathan, Vice President, Customer Advisory, Asia Pacific at SAS. A warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. We will begin this session with a keynote address by Pallavi Malani, giving us a rundown on the viewpoint of tech leaders on the adoption of digital transformation in insurance. Next, there will be a keynote presentation by Mr. Deepak Ramanathan, sharing industry insights on how AI and ML tools can be leveraged to reimagine the insurance value chain. And this will be followed by a panel discussion where all our experts will join us and share their thoughts on today's topic. Without further ado then, let's get started. I would first like to invite Pallavi to begin her keynote speech. Pallavi, over to you.
Thanks, Rudro. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'll just take the next few minutes to share some thoughts on how we are seeing technology play a very critical role as insurers are evolving and looking into the future. I think, but the key question that is really, really fundamental and is being asked is the insurer of the future an insurance company enabled by technology, or really a tech company selling insurance? And I think this key question is really reimagining the role that technology is playing in how insurance is evolving. I think the way insurance companies are thinking about the future is really bionic. And what I mean by bionic is, something where digital and data is really embedded into the way the companies operate. So what you see on this page actually is quite fascinating, because if we had drawn this page a few years earlier, technology and the human component of it would not have taken, 70% of the space, and, the bionic outcomes only 30. So while bionic outcomes, where consumers are expecting much better experience, personalization, new offers, new services, efficiency in operations, the customer experience that Rudro spoke about, from the previous episode, I think all of those are expectations that consumers have in today's world, driven by their experience in the digital ecosystem. And all of that can only be enabled by insurers with the right technology, which is the data and digital part of it, the AI, ML, innovation, all embedded within that, and also with the right, org structure, ways of working to ensure that that can be delivered. And hence, that really is going forward a very large part of what insurers will have to think about, and how they are already thinking about it. Now, the question that we often get asked is, when people have done this, or when insurers have gone down this path, does this really help? Does this really help you differentiate? And no consultant presentation can really be done without putting a few numbers on the page. So we actually went and looked at 200 insurers globally. and we benchmarked their, their maturity on the digital scale across many parameters. And this is the synthesized results of that. So if you see the digital champions compared to the digital laggards, or even, somewhere insurers who are middling somewhere, we see that, the digital champions outperform on every dimension, be it customer experience, be it growth, or be it cost, on every dimension, and actually even valuation. So be it on every dimension, the digital champions are actually outperforming the laggards, and that's the way of the future, and that's where the industry will be evolving. So if that is true, and if if this is the way to go, and that that digital champions, or people who've really invested and taken digital to the next level, if they are really performing well, how do they manage to do it, and how are insurers really thinking about it? So what we've seen as evolving is that in the past, technology was always thought about by the tech function. It was always tech led. I think increasingly what is happening is that technology is deeply embedded in the business strategy, and hence it's business led. So that's the why. Why should companies undertake and undergo such large transformations, be it on the digital or the data side? Why should we embed all the all the fanciness with AI, ML, so on and so forth? What is the business rationale for doing it? I think that's the key question, which then leads you to the what of, hence, what really needs to change in the value chain, be it around the product, pricing, operations, sales, and distribution. What are the components which needs to change, not just for the sake of changing it, but because it leads to business value? And then how do you undertake these transformations, which is where some of the questions that Rudra was talking about, I think, which came through the other episodes as well, around setting up the right digital and data platforms, the right people and organization structure behind it, and then most importantly also having a very strong governance mechanism in place, because that is one component that often gets missed out. But unless this has strong accountability and ownership through the organization, many times these transformations are not very successful. So this is how we've seen that increasingly insurers are thinking about the technology and taking it forward. However, the truth also remains that only 30% of the organizations which actually undertake these transformations are actually successful. And that's the harsh reality of it, because we all think that we're taking some transformation or the other, but only 30% is successful. It's successful in the true sense of really transforming and getting the benefits that digital champions get. And within these 30, we actually also went and interviewed over 900 CXOs across the globe to understand that the companies who've actually managed to do digital transformation successfully, what are the key success factors which are driving those successfully? And we found that there are 6 factors which, if those are right, there is a higher 80% probability of actually succeeding. So what are those 6 factors? I think this is very interesting because this really kind of pulls it all together and has been based on very, very rigorous research which has been done. So number one, having a very integrated and clear strategy of what the organization wants and making sure it's business led. I think nothing can compensate for this being one of the most important parameters of any successful transformation. Number two, making sure that leaders, top leaders, as well as through the middle management, is completely engaged, committed to the transformation, and there is strong ownership and accountability through all levels. This is again extremely critical, for any successful transformation. Number three, making sure the most high caliber people are deployed behind these transformations. Their capacities are freed up. We put them into agile squads. We make them undertake, the entire end-to-end ownership of such transformations. It's not just about the technology and the data teams being involved in this, but through the organization, the best resources being freed up for making these transformations extremely successful. Number three, having a governance in place, and that governance needs to be very agile, needs to be very quick, and needs to be adapt to the ever-changing environment, because as we all know, the landscape is evolving, at a very fast pace. So having a governance which is very agile is extremely critical. Number 5, having the right monitoring in place with clear metrics, targets, and outcomes, so that it's not just a cost invested, but you actually reap the business results out of it. And lastly, making sure, and as you will see, this is the 6th. So lastly, making sure that, the architecture that has been set in place, both on the data as well as on the technology side, is robust, scalable, has the right services built into it, so that it is scalable and, can serve in future. So these are, what we found from our research, that are the 6 parameters which really lead to successful transformations. And I think on some of these parameters, we will delve deeper with the panel as we go forward in this discussion. And the race has already started. I mean, globally, we are seeing, companies pivot to the more digital way, to the more bionic way of doing things already. And hence, we are seeing it's very interesting to see how this space will evolve in India, and what all we need to do to make sure that we are ahead of the game on this. So with that, Rudra, I'll hand back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pallavi. That was really interesting. I think this is proprietary BCG research of global CXOs, right?
That's right.
From the insurance space, and really interesting. I mean, clearly answers the question of urgency and why now. I mean, why do you need to digitally transform your systems, your processes, have a relook at what you're doing today, and the results are out there. Thank you, Pallavi. This was very interesting. Moving on. So very quickly before that, so Pallavi will not be able to stay with us for the panel discussion, but if there are any questions on this, we already have some guests asking us for the presentation. I don't know if Pallavi will be able to share that, but if there are any questions, please do share with us using the Q&A panel, and we will make sure it reaches Pallavi and she can get in touch. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Pallavi. So moving on to the next segment, I would like to invite Mr. Ramanathan to begin his keynote presentation. So you could switch on your camera as well if you'd like that. Or
I got to do both of them. I got to switch on my video and my camera.
Oh,
thank you so much. I hope you guys can see my screen right now.
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Thank you, and thanks to Pallavi. That was a fascinating segue into what we see from a SaaS perspective as to where we see the markets going, where the industry is going. And I know, as everybody on this call is aware, we are going through some very interesting times when it comes to. Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Perfect.
Oh, perfect. All right. So we're going through some very interesting times around a global pandemic that you maybe see once in a century. So I hop back to the past, and back in 1999, Bill Gates wrote this wonderful book called Business at the Speed of Thought. For folks on this call who may have read it or may have not read it, it's a very prescient book because it talks about how the possibility of businesses and technology actually intersecting, and the fact that it's not actually directed at companies who have got it, but it's directed at companies who can push the needle a little more and try to understand how can the intersection between business and technology actually drive and sort of keep have a competitive differentiator in many ways. A wonderful book, and it's sort of there is a theme in terms of why we're calling it Business at the Speed of Thought. So bear with me, and I'll sort of mention why we're looking at it from that way. So as Pallavi mentioned earlier on, I think it's always good to get numbers, and let's look at numbers from an insurance from the insurance business perspective. So we're talking about $1.1 trillion. That's what insurance companies stand to gain in the data and AI process if they can be realized for the insurance industry and globally. And mind you, this number that was there, which is the 1.1 trillion, was almost was pre-COVID. This number is from January 2020. You could imagine that this number has actually gone up substantially because as part of digital transformations that organizations are sort of racing towards, they're finding out that either you're in that digital transformation mode and moving faster, and also sort of providing products that are more innovative, and services that are a lot more innovative. And we'll get to that in just a bit. So, but what's the challenge around that? And again, I go back to what Pallavi was talking about, which is around there are some challenges around governance. And I go back to the video that Rudra played a little while back. And if you look at the first one, people are talking about how do you look at a unified platform that is able to do this. And in the second session that you saw was this lack of having a customer CI 360, kind of a CI 360 view of how customers are working. So I think the key what happens is what organizations are looking for going forward is how are they able to sort of embed analytics into every part of their organization, and that becomes critical. It's not a question about how do you build a statistical model, how do you implement the model, but I think it becomes more important when you start thinking of how that model can drive, like I said a little while back, product innovation, services innovation. How does it all tie back in? And that's where I think this current crisis has actually accelerated a lot of businesses within the region. And I can speak for the Asia Pacific region. A lot of regions are embracing the digital transformation in a much more faster process. I mean, things that took 5 or 6 years to happen are now taking place in a matter of months. And that's a very critical scenario that we are seeing right now. So, of course, is there revenue to be had? Absolutely. The numbers are clear in there. So let's look at, I mean, if your organization is not already in a digital transformation, then you have to accelerate. Because as the crisis has shown, if organizations who are on that path, who have gone on that path and have sort of attained some kind of critical mass in that path, they are now looking to sort of innovate on that process. For the folks who are not there, now is the time to speed up, right? So the drivers, as you can see, for around digital transformations is increased competition. You saw Pallavi mentioning about everybody is a software company going forward. So how do you sort of provide that increased competition to customers? Consumer expectation. And a lot of you on this call who are logged on to see this session, in the end, you are consumers. And dare I say, I'm like, you are all consumers of insurance products, and you have certain expectations. And those expectations are tending to bleed over, which is the expectation you're having is that the insurance company completely understands you, which you saw a little while back, talking about our understanding how the customer behaves. And then you have the technology, right? I mean, how does the AI and cloud technology, I mean, cloud is pretty much a given nowadays. I mean, it's what we're seeing across the region is there is an acceleration that's happened towards the cloud because of this whole process around digital transformation. So you have the drivers in there. The next, of course, is what are those drivers trying to do? So they're going to help you in optimize operations, right? How do you optimize? How do you sort of implement RPA, remote process automation, and making sure that your operations get optimized? How do you provide an extraordinary customer experience? And that is key for a lot of companies in India. And I am seeing across domains, across industries, providing that extraordinary customer experience is going to be the critical part, and it's going to be a key differentiator. And finally, for organizations that are coming into this, how do they empower their people who have maybe for the longest period of time making these calls based on gut instincts and now rely on these automation process so that they can actually provide a lot more value to the company. That's what the empowerment of people actually means in there. What are some of the benefits? Of course, you're looking at efficiency. Once you start doing remote process automation, you're sort of producing a level of efficiency, right? Just imagine, I mean, a lot of us have not been able to go to work into office for the longest period of time. And we were required to be there for doing certain things. A lot of those things can be automated and left to us as individuals providing better oversight, better input, human input going in there. And that makes us a lot more effective as a company, right? So the key drivers, I think, from a benefit perspective is, one is customer experience we talk about. Customer experience is front and center. You would have heard in the previous talk, every organization is now trying to find what is that sweet spot when it comes to customer experience. And then, of course, comes how quickly can you get this information, your time to intelligence. the speed and velocity which you can make those decisions. Again, that came up in the sessions 1 and 2. How do you build better models in terms of actuarial transformation, which you saw Andreas and some of the folks from HDFC, Max Light talking about it. How do you build better volumes for models for your actuarial stuff? How do you reduce total cost of ownership, especially when you move to a cloud model? It becomes a completely different model, and how you sort of leverage those costs. And to me, the last but the most important thing is to provide competitive differentiators. I think what AI and machine learning does is it really allows you to build things around product innovation and services innovation. That's the bottom line. How do you build those product innovation and services innovation for your organization? So, I mean, if you go back to Bill Gates's speed of thought, in the end, a lot of the things that are driving customers right now are around decisions, right? And in each and every day, we make enormous amount of decisions. We have cranial decisions, which are pretty much your brain centralized. Autonomic is your breathing, for instance. It's just automated. The way you breathe, it's just an automated function. And finally, peripheral is how you touch, your feel, your sense. I think where we are going from an operating system for our digital transformation is our number of sources are increasing, and this is all the more true for the insurance business because insurance business had pretty much very finite transaction data, and now suddenly it's an open world where you're talking about image, video, sensor, sound, right? How do you sort of manage all those data pieces coming in? How do you build models, right? And how do you make some models to be learned? How do you make some models to be augmented or automated? The automated was almost like what I said about the decisioning piece, where it becomes a scenario where, like breathing, it sort of your model just goes out and starts making all those decisions. And decisioning is a key to any organization around how you would run the business. So more and more we are seeing that the challenge that organizations are facing is around decisioning. An insurance company makes hundreds and thousands of decisions a day, whether it's finding out if a claim is fraudulent, finding out in terms of what is the propensity for a premium to default, what is the right offer to provide this customer when it comes to a premium rate. These are thousands of decisions that an organization, an insurance company makes. The question that we have, the question that customers are looking at is, how do you automate a lot of these things, and they become automated to a large extent. So like I said, I think the whole process is very simple. We have data, models, and insights. So the goal is, how do you access data? And this goes back to what a lot of the feedback that came in, which is like, let me look at one specific unified platform that can allow me to do all of these things. So not only talking about integrating data from all these different data sources, but using SaaS and open source models to sort of build these modeling assets that you have, and more importantly, embedding it into operational applications, whether it's your live insurance applications, or your premium applications, or also your fraud detection applications. So I think that's the key in terms of how do you power that entire process of digital transformation. That was the last of my slides. I just want to thank you for your time, for listening to what I had to say. And I think it's now over to the panel discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramanathan. That was really interesting. I think a lot of points that a lot of information that is of value and insights that probably a lot of our audience is not aware of. I think it will be very useful. If you need to know more of the topic, though, you can get in touch with our SAS speakers by booking a one-on-one meeting or downloading resources. The link to the page is available in the message box on the right of your screen. My colleagues will just paste the link again. It's the same link that we pasted earlier on in the show. It is now time for us to move on to our panel discussion. I would urge everyone in the audience to drop in their questions and their comments. For the questions, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Typically, if you're using a laptop, it will be at the bottom of your screen. And we will pass them on to the panelists. We will take it towards the end of the show. Before we start, we have a quick poll for our participants. For those of our attendees who may have attended the previous, and you did see the a snapshot of the first 2 episodes, we have these fun polls that we keep on during this webinar. And the first poll is just going to come up. We'll have about 30 seconds, 30 to 40 seconds for all the answers. All our attendees as well as the panelists can answer these. Just sharing the poll. Also, requesting Mr. Ramanathan to maybe stop sharing the screen. I think I'm not able to do that at my end. Yeah, thank you, sir. So the first poll is live now. Please give your answer. The question is, what is the core objective of digital transformation at your organization? This is open to all our attendees as well as the panelists. I think we're getting a very fair split.
That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Because it's quite good.
Yeah, I think fair split. I think I'm just going to now end the poll. 45 seconds. We're still getting some answers. Okay. Sharing the results. So we asked what is the core objective of digital transformation at your organization, and 43% said increase business speed and agility. Clearly, that is important, especially in an extremely competitive market and in a difficult business scenario such as this. 41%, very close, said drive consistent customer experience. Our second episode focused purely on that. We will touch upon it on this episode as well, because we are really looking at the entire value chain. But that is very heartening to know that customer experience and consistent customer experience, I think, is a major focus area. Thank you for that. Inviting all our panelists to join in for the panel discussion. Request you to switch on your Thank you. I think we have Mr. Eswar Natarajan. Sir, could you? Okay, Mr. Natarajan, I think might have been facing some technical issues. My colleagues will just get in touch with Mr. Eswar Natarajan. We can start meanwhile. So my first question is to Mr. Lavanya. And I will ask this question to a few other panelists as well. So operational decisions are critical to how we treat a customer across touch points. How are you rewiring the way your organizations deliver these personalized decisions in an era where customer experience is taking center stage? This is really a broad question, right?
Thanks, Rudra. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to the August panel. First of all, I hope that everybody, all the families, friends of all the people on the panel and the viewers, they are safe and sound. Very, very difficult times indeed. Great question. And if I look at the entire value chain, Rudra, as you mentioned, I think the impact of AIML starts right from deciding who to onboard into the business, right? We are having a lot of innovation around the right choice. See, traditionally what used to happen was the segmentation of customers, especially in insurance, was more done on the basis of mortality experience, right? And the financial ability. These are two drivers that used to pretty much determine the segments that you go after, how you price them, how you underwrite them, and so on and so forth. Because of this whole journey of digital transformation, there is a newer dimension of customers, which is about how digitally savvy and what is the digital learnability of the customers, and is that a separate segment? So the journey for applying AIML starts from there, identifying that cohort, for example, who's more predisposed to online experience. If you come a little later, applying AIML, especially in these days in fraud analytics, how do I underwrite a life without actually meeting the person and meeting the life in person, right? What surrogates of health information? A lot of machine learning is around how do I get the surrogates of medical testing to drive the right underwriting decision making. There's a lot of application of AI, actually more of machine learning around underwriting, right? How do I make sure I can get those signals of, let's say, publicly available data, mash it with personal data, and then make a more composite decision around the risk propensity of a life, right? And then when you come to the customer servicing proposition, the other end of it, it's more about fraud detection. It's about next best action. How do I get my renewals? Whom do I call first? What is the best propensity of this particular block to respond to a renewal call, for example? How do I drive persistency? So if you see, there's a huge implication of data and analytics across the entire value chain. And now, because of COVID, what is, at least in the context of Max Life, it has just accelerated that journey forward as far as some of those investments are concerned.
Right. And we spoke about this earlier today. Mr. Datta, I mean, what about, would you like to add to that? And I will also bring in Mr. Mansoori after that, but from a life perspective.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me here. And I wish all of us are enjoying the time and sound and healthy. The operational decision that you centered your question around is a little open-ended question. So allow me to probably work on it. So from as far as the BALIC BALIC's point of view, there are multiple dimensions to it. One, we always taken care as a theme, okay, and very clearly care is customer. C stands for customer communication. Okay, you have agility action, you have reskill revamp, okay, and you have either employee first or engage in terms of doing the right work. Then there are multiple stuff that keeps coming, but you have to choose what is the best required at that point in time. But that's the guiding principle. Let me come into the other dimensions to it. From the customer point of view, we looked into, and not because of COVID, from the very beginning, that I could see BALIC last 18-20 months, that uninterrupted customer experience across channel has been given required priority, and tools around it. Recently, if you talk about WhatsApp or Life Assist or the Smart Assist or iServe and stuff like that has come into play. But in last 18 months, this has been there, consistently growing up to make sure that they have uninterrupted customer service experience whenever they are interacting with physical BALIC or digital BALIC. That's very, very important. And we try to diminish the difference between the physical BALIC, the way they see it, and the digital BALIC, the way they see it, in a way that, symmetry. On the product per se, the launch of, let's say, Flexi Income Goal or SPG, okay, Smart Protect Goal, which is one is at the term, one is at a par side, also help to create the proposition. Okay, important part is our partners, and we had been very, very focused around to look into the partners ecosystem when they're interacting with us in terms of logging in a business or for a servicing or for some other requirement, digitally as well as when they do it one-on-one, is absolutely clean, clear, transparent every time. Of course, as my panelist also said, all of these, the digital drive has taken a tremendous speed during last 6 months for all right reasons. But this, as a thought, has always been there and guiding us in terms of operational perspective to operational view to the whole ecosystem.
Great, sir. And thank you for those comments. I think this is very consistent. Mr. Mansoori, from a general insurance sort of viewpoint, I mean, what would your comments be to this question? And I think Mr. Esper Natarajan joined us, but then he left because I was hoping to draw him in as well. But please, sir, please go on.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me on the panel here. You know, I just saw that Deepak presenting the quote from Bill Gates, business at the speed of the thoughts. Truly speaking, in today's dimension in the consumer-centric market, it is not the business at the speed of the thought, it's a service at the speed of the thought.
There you go.
Okay. And and that's what it has really become. And you know, the whole digitalization, everything had been working about it, and the problem was not that companies were not focusing, and probably, you know, in the Indian insurance market compared to all the counterparts somewhere else, digitalization was the necessity for us, because the kind of volume we deal with, and more so in the general insurance segment. I mean, as SDFC Ergo, we have issued 1.5 crore policies. Okay, and when we talk about that kind of a volume and the low ticket size of it, it's really become important that digitalization has to be there, number one. And of course, the question that you have, the decision has to be with the lightning speed. Now, the customer today can reach out to us in varied modes, be it IVR, be it mobile application, be it WhatsApp. So it's the customer who is choosing. And when customer is choosing to reach out to us and ask for the service, and with that large volume of customer you have, how do you maintain the consistency part of it?
Sure.
Humans, with all due respect to them, probably their time is over. Machines are taking over, and they will start learning about competing with them, and rather evolve as a race, not to do the transaction, but the designing of those transactions. And that is how I really look at it. And when you have that, okay, somewhere the communication from, I'm going to give an example of it. In the month of March, we launched WhatsApp. I thought, okay, there is going to be very little interaction of it because of, but the way we launched it, we have seen 60 time volume. I mean, my last month volume was 60,000 interactions with the customer through the WhatsApp, because that is where people in today's time and sitting at home probably more hooked into it. And as long as you have the wonderful NLP, they are very, very finding it very, very engaging. So be it, you know, which channel where they go to, whether they deal with the human A or human B, unless you will be able to provide the decisioning with the lightning of the speed and with that consistency, you cannot make the customer happy ever. And that's where this whole consistency part of it, you rightly asked in your question also, becomes very, very relevant. And that's where the role of digital, AI, machine learning become extremely relevant. The issue is all about, in the truly speaking, the success lies more so in the transaction oriented industry that we deal with. Can we really predict what the customer's next action is going to be? Can my machine tell me whether, okay, all right, if I issued a policy, what is that this customer is going to call me for? Is it going to be about he did not see the policy copy, or is it not understood what covers has been sold, or is it about some, you know, enhancement he would like to do it? Can I reach out to him much earlier? And I think the machines can do, AI, ML can do much better job, and the skills that is needed in the operational capabilities, be it on writing, be it on the sales side of it, or the claim part of it, or endorsement part of it. If we can be more predictive in nature, we can service and reach out to the customer much better way.
Well, wonderful. So predictive analytics, and I'm sure this would include data from social media and other streams to sort of combine into one sort of pot, right? I mean, all your touch points. So you have one single view of the customer. You know what he's going to ask for. You know what he's bought from you before, and thereby what is sort of progression through your life cycle is going to be, right? Mr. Ramanathan, coming to you now, how is technology gearing up to aid the insurance industry with this change? I mean, you showed us about the benefits of the transformation across a bit about on what our industry colleagues have spoken.
So Rudra, thanks very much. I mean, that's a great point that Mr. Mansoori brings about, which is like, in India, it's about scale, right? So how do you get, I mean, there's so much of, once you go into an acquisition mode, you're acquiring new customers. You also have to figure out then what's the cost per decision. I think that's where it boils down into. Because a lot of these decisions that are made will in the end become automated, right? And that's a classic example of machine learning. The goal of machine learning, so machine learning is from a statistical point of view are not new concepts. But I think where machine learning comes into play is essentially about having greater focus on accuracy and then being able to operationalize that particular model. That model then starts executing at the edge and sort of supports your decisioning processes in there. And in India, you'll have a lot of decisioning processes once you do those segmentations. Because again, to what Gautam said, the segmentations are also changing, right? And I think Manu also talked about how the segmentation processes are changing. Because there are now newer data sources that are coming in. It's not only the insurance companies' data sources, but you're also looking at external data sources that become available. And once you start blending them, how do you get the confidence that, okay, now I'm going to make a decision, and I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to automate that entire decision. So it could be a fraud detection kind of decision, or it could be a specific premium that rate that you want to sort of provide to the customer. And as you notice that, the customer experience has become front and center around it. The goal of what technology does, I think, is it now becomes possible for us to automate at scale and at cost a lot of these decisions. And there are some intersections of technologies that are taking place. One, of course, is the cloud-based technologies, which makes it possible for us to sort of have a utility-based decisioning process in place. The second one is, I think, the algorithms are a lot more, have opened out in many ways. So when historically, once upon a time, statistics was in the realm of actuaries, was in the realm of data science people, the quantitative analysts, which was very a backroom kind of function. I think the fundamental difference that we have seen in the last 5 years is that analytics has come front and center. It's moved from the back room to a boardroom conversation. Right. So in the boardroom, they're asking like, so what are you guys doing about analytics, and how can we make sure that we are a competitive differentiator? And that, I think, is the biggest shift that's taking place in the last 5 years when it's moved from a back room to a boardroom kind of conversation.
True, and this is something that Mr. Lavanya also we spoke about earlier in the day about online, online analytics rather than offline analytics, right? I mean, what you're doing at the edge. This is exactly, I think, what Mr. Ramanathan also mentioned.
That's
right at the point of interaction, you need to have all of the data and be able to do it on an immediate basis, rather than go back and have a decision and come again. This is, I think, a very important question to sort of start off with. We had very strong. Relevant and strong views. I'm going to now put up a second poll before I go to the next question. We just do this to make our discussion a little more lively, and please bear with us. I hope you enjoy it. Putting up the second poll on the screen now, and all our attendees as well as our panelists can vote. 40 seconds is what we will keep it live for. Okay, so we are at 45 seconds, just closing the poll. Yeah, so we asked what are the biggest challenges that your organization has actually experienced in trying to undertake a successful digital transformation. We have asked all our attendees to select two choices. So the highest, so 51% said lack of collaboration across business teams. Is the biggest challenge. That basically means that teams are working in silos. There needs to be sort of a horizontal approach, especially in digital collaboration. And the second highest, 42%, was embedding analytics into digital platforms. So this is again very relevant to the conversation we're having right now.
Yeah.
I think great. We are pretty much, the polls are in line with what we are discussing. So yeah. Coming to the next question, again, and I'll start with Mr. Mansoori. With digital transformation, processes are expected to get intelligent and smarter. As technology leaders, what will be your choice to drive this? A, have specialized new age solutions with embedded AI/ML capabilities, or B, infuse or augment current processes with AI/ML capabilities in a way that they can be centrally orchestrated?
So Rudra, it's not about a choice between A and B. Probably both of these are relevant in today's time because technology is also maturing. There are limited choices. If you ask about is that okay, you are going to have something very well embedded piece out of the box you can take and start utilizing it. I mean, as even at my place as I'm working today, I'm having both the options. So I'm working with some vendor who's bringing in on around the voice technologies, the all AI embedded into it, because I feel that okay, I would be able to go live much faster and start generating value for the organization. As I talked about it, it's all about service with the speed of the thought. And if you have to do that, so that's one side of it. And I will always welcome those innovation that is happening in the marketplace, and people need to lot more focus. People like SaaS, etc., probably need to go a little bit ahead of the curve and start developing those technologies and out of the box solution. There is a great need of it at this moment. But at the same time, I'm also working, creating our centralized engine, which can power on the AI side of it, be it on my IVR systems or be it my chatbots or emails, or any other means that customer would like to get in touch with me. So it's all about having a mix of both as we progress.
Got it. So it's a mix of both. But one just follow-up question to that, to Mr. Mansoori. Is it not harder for existing processes to be sort of scaled up with AI/ML when you have certain things defined? There's obviously skill set and training is one thing, but also when you have a process that is very clearly defined, if you infuse a new system on top of it.
It's challenging. However, we also need to understand the complexity that current ecosystem will always have. Okay, and you really need to see that okay, what you can cull it out or what you can augment with.
Right.
Okay, it may happen that okay, time has come, you completely revamp something and go whatever we have, let's keep it aside. This is what we are going to go. But every journey is complicated, and also there is the immense amount of knowledge that organization has, philosophy has, practices it has, the way you would like to do it. All this needs to pour in before any AI can start giving the right solution.
Got it. Mr. Lavanya, would you like to add to that?
Sure, Rudra. If I look at the key challenges that I believe we've experienced in this journey of transformation, it might be the biggest challenge that is digital learnability, right? And it's less to do with training than that to do with mindsets, because technology is only one part of digital transformation.
Right.
What digital also brought about was the whole idea of disintermediation of information for decision making, right? Which means people will lose power. People will lose that opportunity to be heroic performers, right? So the first challenge that digital transformation definitely meant from a people perspective, at least what I've experienced, is the whole idea of the digital mindset, right? Are we ready for it? The second piece was, as Deepak would very, very, very rightly appreciate, when the enterprise data structures were built 10, 15 years ago, they were not built with the intent of analytics.
Mm-hmm.
They were built with the intent of transaction processing, right? You had the birth of a world where at first it was in-premise, separate storage, leading to data appliances, and from appliances to SaaS models, right? Mm-hmm. So we have seen the transformation, and unfortunately, the way the enterprise data was architected hasn't transformed at that space as technology has. Yes. So suddenly the enterprise are sitting with huge silos of enterprise information, sitting in pockets, sitting in silos, and not designed. So when I used to meet clients in my erstwhile life, when I was a service provider, that I can do magic and analytics. They said, hey, we get it. We get the algorithms, we get everything, but my data is not even ready for the next 9 months for me to do analytics on it. Right? That was challenge number 2.
So you're essentially saying that it has to be cleaned data available in order to be able to use that data. I mean, the systems are there, but yeah, the raw data is not ready.
Hardly 23% of total data enterprise data today, as McKinsey research says, is actually usable data for analytics. Right? And the final part, besides culture and availability of data, was also the question of the whole idea of what does digital mean in terms of context of business applicability, right? Yeah. So what digital has done is it has brought the worlds of technology and business so close, where a CMO is asking, hey, which platform will you deliver this customer churn data on, right? Yeah. And a CTO is asking me, hey, can you also take off churn when you're building this particular appliance, right? So the world is colliding, which is putting a lot of stress on the type of skills and digital mindsets that the leadership will need to have to address the needs of digital transformation, right? And that's another big challenge that I see, that are the leaders, the enterprise leaders in the organization even skilled appropriately to understand the art of possible of AI and ML in their respective business processes. So these are 3 big, challenges that I have experienced personally and that I see around. That lead to a very, very sort of a challenging environment on, yes, all for digital, all for it. How do we get it done?
True. I think you touched upon a very interesting, a very soft aspect of the entire thing, which is essentially how convinced and how ready is the leadership to drive down this change, this mindset. And I think even during the BCG presentation, I think Pallavi is not part of this right now, but those were one of the 6 points. I think the second or third point, right? Mr. Datta, a question to you. Decisions are interconnected and impact departmental KPIs. Like bad underwriting will drive up claim, inaccurate pricing will result in loss of revenue. How are you enabling collaboration between departments while ensuring accountability as part of your digital revamp? And this is one of I think when we did the poll, the highest share was this interdepartmental collaboration was a question, right? Was a point.
Yeah, it's a very nice question. The poll actually gave us lack of collaboration,
right,
hindering transformation. And let me give the answer from that perspective, because we are into big shift in terms of transformation. This is an year that we kind of termed as year of platform implementation. We have already done with maybe 8 or 9 platforms, and the core is coming next year. Now, when you try to do so much of change, one thing is extremely critical for all of us to fall back upon is your ability to co-create the design. Okay, so there is always a technology architecture that you can go ahead and build it. Most cases it does not deliver anything because it has not been followed up from a business architecture to process architecture and then linked to a technology architecture. So co-creation of the business architecture and the process architecture is extremely critical for a successful transformation, because technology is for many of us it comes easy, it will follow through. That's the first thing. I think the second point, which is extremely critical in decision making and also making the co-creation, or collaboration to work, is availability of your meaningful data. Now, I'm talking about meaningful data, and to an extent, my discussion 2-3 years back with Deepak also, would probably remember. We always talk about hard data, which is tabular, structured, hard data. An enterprise is much, much richer with soft data, which is audios, videos, derived data points, behavioral, aspects of customers, partners, trends. Now, these normally do not take part in your decision making. In your decision making, what is primarily taken is the hard data, which is the structural data. Now that is also a big chunk of push in terms of ensuring that the output of that collaboration is I would say authentic, okay, and a right direction. So for us who kind of a mid-sized player going through a tremendous amount of change, almost everything that we see today or touch today are going through changes. These are the two very big points which we always look into. There is one third point is extremely critical, and it would be not complete if I don't touch it. Is what is the outcome of it? If you are doing something for the customer, how the customer would experience it. If you are doing something for the partner, how the partner would experience it. That bit is extremely critical. So when we design it, we also try to see it from a dispassionate point of view and see it from the customer or partner or employee point of view. Does it actually make sense? These are the 3 points, I think what had been driving the internal, transformation that BALIC is seeing through.
Right, Mr. Mansoori, would you like to add to that, and Mr. Ramanathan after that, if you have a.
It's a very interesting question and also problem to solve for most of the organizations.
Right.
And the silos are created, because everybody wants to be picture perfect, and underwriting wants to do the decision which are picture perfect. Nobody can raise the fingers. And here are the claims guys who would like to ensure that nobody can raise any fingers to them, and they are not making any wrong decision into it. Sales want to go and sell the company for $1 all the time, as we all know. In the whole process, when we create the silos, everybody forgets where the customer fits into. And there is no ownership of the customer. And everybody picture perfect, the customer is not. What's the point of such things? So I have started believing a lot more. The time has come. We need to strip down the powers of these humans. Why every claim needs to be scrutinized, and that's what we try to do. When we took the mission that my health claims, be pre-authorization or discharge, must be approved in less than 15 minutes, we said, of course, we need to strip down the decisions from the humans. They should not be into the habit of scrutinizing each and everything, because they would like to do the picture perfect job and save every penny of it. The moment you do it, they are suddenly, all right, these are the only set of things you are supposed to look into it. Do much more evolved job. And the decision started going to the machines. The fraud engine started taking over and saying what is fraud, what is not fraud, rather than the humans applying their egos, and I will call it egos so many times, they want to prove the point. Okay. And the moment we do it, the things dynamics completely changes.
I mean that's true. We are so I'm from the media sector, and we are heading towards a space where news will soon be written by machine learning algorithms. We're already, honestly, I shouldn't be saying this, but we are experimenting with such technology. And you mentioned egos, biases, and we are all human. And even in journalism, we see a lot of that creep in, right? So definitely there is potential for machine learning algorithms to clean up a lot of this and have a very clear-cut process out there. So my next question is for Mr. Ramanathan. Yeah, why with AI ML taking center stage in enterprise operations, basis your interaction with organizations across industries and geographies, what is the key ingredient of success? Newer algorithms and newer models at lesser cost, or having a governed and automated process to continuously churn insights and quickly ingest it into the business operations? This is a fairly long question, so apologize for that.
No, it makes sense. So I'll go back to my co-panelists, and I think they had each of them had very pointed scenarios, and I think the audience can learn a lot from the folks who are on this call on the panel, because so let me start off with Manu first. And Manu mentioned about the fact that, hey, we have now moved in the last 5, 10, I would say 7, 8 years, we have moved from an era of scarcity to an era of abundance, right? And I would say it's an era of abundance of data, right? So if you cast your mind back to what Manu was talking about, which is, back in the traditional data warehousing days, there were restrictions in terms of the number of data sources you could actually get in, because It was expensive to store all the data, to maintain the data. I think we have now opened that out, because of technologies becoming cheaper. As all of us are carrying a supercomputer in our back pocket with a mobile phone, we know that, right? I mean, the technologies have become cheaper. The computing has become a lot more cheaper. So there is an advantage whereby you can now look and say, well, we could look at a lot of other data sources coming in, rather than restricting ourselves to saying, in a scarcity world, I'm only going to take these 5 sources, right? You can, it's a green field, green sky, a blue sky in some ways. And to add to what Gautam mentioned, and when the time I met Gautam, we were also speaking about the fact that why should we restrict ourselves to only transaction data, right? Transaction data means the customer is in my environment. What you really want to know is, what is the customer's environment looking like? And that's when the ecosystem builds out in terms of understanding. And all of us are in a world where all applications are looking at what environment you live in, where do you go, where do you shop, what do you do, where do you live, how often do you text. I mean, you get not only information about what you are, but how you sort of behave beyond where you are from my environment perspective. So that sort of opens out in terms of like, how do you design new product innovation, service innovation, because you're working on blue sky, because you're saying, look, I'm not really too much worried about how much of data I need to store. I remember when I first, we were building churn prediction models back in India, back in 2000, almost 20 years ago. We used to use 2 years of data to predict a churn model. That's now come down to 6 months because behaviors are changing so quickly, right? And a lot of insurance is about behaviors, right? As to how behaviors, how they are changing and understanding what those changes are having in behavior. So it opens out the insurance companies to now almost have a blue sky in terms of how can we look at not only the standard structured data that Gautam was mentioning about, but let's look at other data sources that come in also. The machine learning part of it, which is very hyped, and there's a lot of, I would say sometimes overhyped. But the machine learning part of it, I think the fascinating part about it is, I think it's got to do a lot with automation. To me, machine learning is equal to automation. So if insurance companies start looking at machine learning as more in terms of, not in terms of I'm being able to build this nice model, but how can I help in my automation processes? That produces those things around product innovation and service innovation that Mahmood was talking about, right? It's no longer about, hey, I've got the actuary who's building out a better model. What we're saying is, how do we get this model to get consumed downstream in an automated fashion, in a cost-effective fashion? So there are these intersection of technologies like cloud, like cheaper algorithms, open source algorithms. They're all combining together to sort of changing the dynamics in many ways as to how insurance companies start looking at analytics for internal use, but also for their customers.
Thanks, Deepak. So this brings us to the third poll, and before I move on to the last few questions, and this is the third and the last poll for today. Just sharing that on the screen, and so that we move quickly. Yeah, about 30-40 seconds odd. Request our panelists and attendees to vote.
This one seems to be much easier. You will have very pointed answer to my mind.
Yeah, and I think there's a very strong skew towards one answer. So.
Yes.
Can you see the live results as well? I don't think so. I think I'll have to share.
No, we can't. We are guessing.
Not yet.
So okay, 46 seconds. Closing the poll now. Sharing the results. Yeah. So we asked what are the most critical steps to enable a successful digital transformation, and asked you to select 2 out of the 5 choices. So 59% said ability to move business to a digital platform. So clearly, I mean, that's I think very clear. 45% also said that data security, and that's a very significant answer, because our following question is actually around this, and we did touch upon data security during our previous episodes as well, right? I have a question on data security. I think I will get to that after this. My next question is for Mr. Lavanya. So automation is core to IT, and Mr. Ramanathan just spoke about it, and we understand the benefit it can get, right? How are we bringing automation to the analytics and AI process within the organization?
Great question, Ratan. I completely agree with. See, when we talk about analytics, as I said in the afternoon when we spoke, see, in the traditional old mindset of analytics was more, hey, there'll be a set of data scientists, professionals, you FTP a batch of data to them, they will do the analysis, come back to you with some recommendations, some PowerPoints. That doesn't really speed up the business, right? While it does help you make certain decisions. The core disintermediation of a human intervention for a repetitive decision. So I have a very simple way of thinking that if the inputs remain the same, if you arrive at the same output with whatever complex decision-making process, then it better be automated, right? So the application of RPA, for example, to not only process learning, but also data progression, data transports, right? So that's one big piece on how to merge the worlds of automation with AI ML, right? The second piece, when we're talking about automation, it's not just automation of the core business transaction. It is also automation of information flow across those complex data pipes that reside in a typical enterprise-wide scenario, right? And that's where the maximum challenge is. The challenge is not inside building the business rules. The challenge is to enable the business rule, you need such a complex integration of the existing data pipes in the organizations, right? And it is that overhauling that scares a lot of organizations. So I think the biggest bottleneck or the biggest challenge to solve in automation of analytics is truly around applying the idea of core automation to the enterprise data bus, applying the core ideas of automation to data transports. That's where the maximum, I would say, benefit would come in. And finally, if you take the idea of inline analytics, see, Gartner says you used to design applications for let's say scale. You used to design applications for security. You used to design applications for response time. Now also design applications for analytics, right? So the whole idea of analytics by design is now becoming a fundamental part of how we are building new products and services. Are we setting up our data infrastructure the right way from the very design phase itself so that it lends itself to an amazing automated analytics scenario, right? So that's a big shift that I see happening in the idea of bringing automation to analytics.
Right. Very interesting. That means, I mean, you think of it from the ground up rather than transpose it at a later stage. Obviously, that has a lot more value because, and this also goes back to a question that I asked Mr. Mansoori earlier. Mr. Mansoori, back to you on this aspect, on the automation aspect. What are your views?
You know, what Deepak and Manu said is absolutely right. You know, and a fundamental way that today, you know, and there was a poll questions, a lot of guys answered that, okay, enabling the business to digital. I truly speaking have a fundamental problem with that polling actually. And when people say that, okay, digital needs to enable business, actually, we really have to take a step back. And what Manu was exactly right, it's all about ground up. Today, if you are going to launch the product by characteristics has to be digital. You know, then there's no question of enabling it. It's a question of the product itself by characteristics is digital. It has a component of selling, not only selling, and that most of the digitalization actually stops there. But what is going to happen by tomorrow? The claim is going to come. Are you going to still follow the traditional process, or you expect the customer to come on the same platform and get the claim done? I mean, Lemonade created that history of settling a claim in 3 seconds. God knows how many claims they might have settled. But that's the tone. That's the way that all the business models has to emerge altogether. Okay, and when I look at it, the whole complexity often comes with when we do not try to take those two things disintegrated fashion. For me, operational efficiencies, cost reduction, etc., those are archaic thought process altogether. When we started looking at, and for example, give a classical example, when we started looking at SDFC Ergo, since last 3-4 years, we have changed our tone. We do not talk about cost optimization altogether. We only talk about that how we make the life easier for the customer, how do we reduce voice of customer, how do we increase NPS. The interesting part was then when we brought down our 3 hours of claim approval TED to less than 15 minutes. When we started, it was like, okay, you want to do it, this is what challenge you are giving, and we gave you a challenge of 30 minutes. We said, okay, all right, we maybe probably had to increase the manpower strength by 3 times, and then we can do it because of that's the kind of a concurrency we do it. But when we did it, and less than 6 months time, it was completely opposite. We brought down the manpower by almost 40% to achieve 15 minutes.
Wow.
Okay, and this is how the complete design thinking principle, reimagining the entire piece and doing it, and savings, cost, operational efficiency, they are all just a byproduct of it.
Right. I mean that's fantastic. I think great customer experience and saving costs at the same time. I mean, nothing better than that. Mr. Datta, I mean, my next question for you, and this is really the data security sort of question that sort of came from the last poll. Insurance is a highly regulated industry, right? And it deals with personal identifiable information, personal health information, all kinds of private data. How are you enabling data and decision governance within your organization?
So yeah, being an insurance company, you get hold of various facets of customer data on a regular basis. And and this question became a little more relevant during the COVID because the business model changed a little bit in terms of how do you handle it. So here is apart from security, there is another dimension which comes, which we were discussing other day, is transparency. Okay. What we structurally all insurance company would be having their own structure of CISO and control function, which kind of enables and ensures that all traditional method of secure data security, while data is getting generated, while it is in store, and while it is also transporting from A to B, are secure. Okay, so that's the primary job of there, and that I think as a structural element, all insurance company would be having it today. Beyond that, and particularly this time when many of us are working from home, let's say underwriter working from home, and he has to access the customer health record, customer income record, because we are an insurance company, as some time back one of us very clearly said, that industry traditionally looks into the health and the income factor of it, okay, for almost every cases. Now, how do we then, earlier that person used to work in the security of, in the office and the PC, which are all hardened and secure. Today, how do we do it? Okay, and today, while he is working from home, how do we make sure that it is secure? Or for the matter, let's say call center agent who has to have all the access of data, and at the same time will converse securely with my partner, customers and partners. Now, these activities, how do you make them secure? So there are technology stack which kind of enables you to look into the only interface and not get hold of data per se. Okay, so use the process, use the information, but do not get that data, to that layer. And smoothly, we are happy that we could smoothly transition from our earlier being to this being, where we could actually enable our underwriters or our call center agents, so that for that matter, for our system admins to be able to do their regular job, but at the same time has only access to information do not have access to data. Okay,
Right.
and the whole part of it, would remain secure, because we absolutely do not push anything to the end mile as of today. We kind of built, and we were happy that we did some drill just before the lockdown hit us hard, and that helped us to be a little more luckier than many others maybe. So we kind of scaled up with the help of our partners, that secure virtual desktops, enable them to have required application platforms, so that they could smoothly do their part of the job, whether that is a call center, or it is an investment consultant, or it is an underwriter or a system admin. That's just one facet. It's a long story, but I just wanted to share one facet so that it kind of understand.
It's a very important aspect, I think, which is affecting not only the insurance sector, across all sectors. This is one of the biggest
course.
Things, right? The data protection. Well, Mr. Mansoori, would you like to add to that from the lens of a general insurance industry? You have several products, motor, health, etc. Right. So how do you sort of do this?
And I think Gautam largely covered it very nicely, all those aspects of it. But for me, the key to success when it comes to information security is, and Gautam also touched upon that part, is the information availability, be it data or information, has to be need to know basis. Okay. Exactly. As a very valid point that, okay, call center executive, I need to give the entire access. But am I able to really control that, okay, what access the person is doing? And if somebody is doing, am I able to create that threat that, okay, you are being paused?
So graded access or something, yeah.
Absolutely. So what we simple thing did is, when we have to move work from home, we said, okay, all right, these 5 information, you really in a normal course, you don't need to. If you need it, I will provide that information, because I don't want customer service to be affected. But you are going to request for it, of course, in real time, in line. And then I have a clear log it, and I can do the validation against the conversation that has happened between the customer. Did you really need it? And building that culture that, okay, you are being watched, building that culture that, okay, information sensitive and be careful about it, and that big way helps.
This must have been very hard for the entire industry to suddenly move to this this sort of architecture.
Absolutely.
Overnight, right?
It happened just overnight for all of us.
Right. So my last question and this is to Mr. Lavanya. COVID, with all its unpleasant attributes, in many ways is being seen as a digital transformation agent, right? And we've all sort of touched upon this. What is your 3 to 5 year horizon for this transformation that is ongoing? A lot of these changes are going to stay. Some of them maybe pick up pace, and it's good for the industry, right? I mean, if you really have to look at a silver lining, this is really a tragedy. I don't know if you can look at any silver lining. But what are those sort of 3 to 5 year horizon transformation that is ongoing? And maybe Mr. Mansoori and Mr. Datta can also add to that after that. Yeah.
Sure, Rudra. As you rightly said, the rationale for acceleration definitely has been a very difficult environment and a challenge posed by COVID. But as Max Life, we are very clear that this has to be a permanent muscle. Even how we sell, how we interact with the customers, how we make decisions, if it does not make us better in perpetuity, then we are actually missing an opportunity. So it's as good as a missed opportunity. Now, from a Max Life perspective, if you see the next 3 to 5 years, I think the whole idea is today the act of feeling unprotected, or the idea of feeling unprotected in a consumer's mind, and the time when that actually gets fulfilled by a policy reaching a customer, right? If you see today, there's a tremendous time lag between these two events, right? Now, then the question comes around ubiquitousness of that service. The decision comes around, how do I predict that feeling of safety, right? The need to feel safe. How do I transform the relationship of an insurer, especially a life insurer, from a transaction-based relationship to a long-term engagement-based relationship? Because I don't want my people to only get in touch with customers at the renewal premium dates or once in a while. But how do you really become a life advisor for my customers and truly build an engagement platform where my customers can engage with me in a very wide variety of topics, not just life insurance, right? So how do you build that engagement platform that goes beyond the idea of transactions? That's another big push that we are taking in as Max Live. The third dimension is around intelligent servicing, right? This is the whole idea of disintermediation of manual intervention in operations. If I see next 5 years down the line, a machine can pretty much underwrite 90% of the cases, at least in life. Because the scenarios and the decision points are fairly limited, I do see a lot of disruption happening in the next 3 to 5 years in our industry around underwriting. So today, if it's 90% art, it'll definitely become 90% science and 10% art, right? That's one big transformation that I definitely see. And finally, at the end of customer making the promise complete to the customers. How important am I in the life of my customers beyond the transactions that I'm servicing to them? How, as a life insurer, I start looking at the broader total, what I call as the total life cycle, the value of a customer, the complete life cycle value of a customer. I will no more see the customer as what premium the customer gives me today, but more over the life cycle of a customer, what is the total revenue that I can get from a customer? Because life events are different. I have to get more engaged. So definitely a much broader view around engaging in the life of my customers is definitely a big directional change that I would see many life insurers would take as the relationship becomes more and more multidimensional and beyond the immediate product of the service.
This is essentially bringing the brand much closer to the individual through various engagements. Content is a major space, definitely there. Mr. Datta, anything to add to that in terms of, and for Bajaj Alliance specifically, the 3 to 5 year sort of horizon?
See, I give you two-pointed answer here. The digital transformation that we started around 2 years, 1.5 years back, has already started producing its own, output, as I talked about. I think the core should also complete, sometime next year, and then it will go on. It's not a fill in and shut it kind of a project. As you understand, digital transformation for a platform of a running, life insurance company, it has got many other dimensions. So product after product, it will go on. What happened in last 6-8 months is the additional part that has come up. Okay, additional part in terms of earlier. Just let me give you a small, storyline here. Earlier, a life insurance, if you were to buy a life insurance, you would have called that agent. He would have come and visited at your home. You would have had a cup of coffee or a chai with him and discussed the whole proposition. Mm-hmm. And if it was actually making sense, after taking a little more consent from your other aspects, you might give him a okay, and then the whole business booking process would start. So if you just map it from a business architecture point of view, it's a pre-sales, sales, post-sales, very clearly what I mentioned. Pre-sales is where the interactions were very high. You were very experiencing that brand, that offering much more closely. Sales is more of a transaction. Again, post-sales is where you are experiencing that brand in a different format. In the COVID time, and I'm trying to answer it from the question, particularly on the COVID time, what happened for many of us, this proximity discussion, a chai with you, has stopped. What this small little phenomena would have brought in the whole transaction is transparency, is a sense of trust, is a sense of ownership about the whole contract that you're getting at. Okay. Now, when this was getting challenged because of COVID, and as we see, it is not going to get, we are not going to go out of this wood very soon. Yeah. It will be there for some more time. So we understood that we have to make sure that this is an area where we have to close. Okay. So sometime back, we launched our WhatsApp, and it kind of loved by unique customer count. If I give you around 5.5 lakhs, in last 6.5 months for an insurance company of our size, life insurance company of our size, which means customers are actually reaching out. Then we started looking at the human to machine interaction that were happening earlier. Is when my sales manager used to go with a tablet and he sits beside you and does things on tablet, and today he does it at his place and he tells you. There is a sense of lack of transparency that creeps in. If it happens with me, I would understand. If it happens with you, you would also understand.
Right.
But there is no other way. Then we thought, can we extend this phenomena to his whatever device he uses? Okay, here comes the recently launched Smart Assist, where we say whatever is happening here, and not for individual advisor, but for also institutional advisor and any interaction, so to say, can we extend what exactly we give it? Okay, so this is where the digital transformation, and like that there are plenty other stories that I can talk about, but this is where the digital transformation that we started with a very serious note has also catered to those extremely important areas of performance, areas of confidence, areas of transparency, trust in this time.
Right. Mr. Mansoori, just ending this question with you with the last sort of thing, 3 to 5 years COVID situation. How is this going to be?
Actually, it's going to be a very interesting time, and a lot of things are talked about, so not to repeat that part. But if you really divide the business, this is the sales, processing, and the service. From my point of view, the sales and processing would simply start disappearing slowly. This is all going to turn digital. This is all going to go sales, self-service mode. And then comes the most complex part of servicing. And we probably insurance companies are still thinking that we are doing enough from the digitalization, AI, ML point of view. But as I can see, we are going to end up in a very, very difficult situation, because today's customer, when he's dealing, he's just looking at, okay, how do I watch a movie on an online platform which doesn't require interface. I don't have to call to anybody to get, okay, hey, I got stuck, can you restart it? Unfortunately, unlike any other industry, insurance is slightly different. The transactions here, when it comes to service, are a lot more complex. When a customer comes to you and he talks about that, he has a claim, he doesn't start that he's a claim, we want to come and register a claim. He starts that, I was going at 4 a.m. in the morning, then I met my girlfriend and this and that. And you're wondering for a minute what the hell here is going to end up with. And worst part of it, unlike any other industry, every word is spoken, every word written to the customer is a legal terms for them, and the customer can hold you against. And when the customer is so spoiled, servicing him in that fashion is going to be extremely complex. And the lot more data science is going to be actually far beyond data science. That how do we build that human intelligence that we can make it a touchless, faceless, transaction, and still accurate, protecting all possible interests as an insurance company of yours. So I can see a lot more complexity coming our way, and a lot more innovation is going to happen in that space.
Okay, that's interesting. A lot more complexity coming the industry's way. Mr. Ramanathan, any sort of closing comments here? I will take a few audience questions. I think I only take 2. We are already almost a little over an hour and a half. So I'll just take 2 audience questions. But any closing comments?
I think everybody pretty much hit the nail on the head. And when it comes to like what their initial challenges are, how do you sort of go through those digital transformations, and what Gautam was mentioning about in terms of let's look at what are the business outcomes that it needs to drive. Mahmood was talking about how do you make sure it's relevant for the business, right? More than importantly anything else. So you can hear all these buzzwords, but how do you make it relevant for the business? And back to what Manu was saying, there's a transformation that needs to take place from from the organizational perspective, to understand that AI ML will produce these innovative solutions for customers, and how do they sort of leverage those things? So
you share the same view as you share the same view, sir, as Mr. Mansoori, that things are going to get only more complex given the situation we are at today, and also from a perspective of the Asia Pac region? You deal with a lot of insurance companies. Where is the Indian insurance industry versus the rest in dealing with this COVID situation and sort of?
So honestly, sure. So yeah, I think the insurance industry is dealing with two cycles there. One is a regulatory cycle which goes with IFRS 17, and those are cycles that need to get done, which are regulatory, but not really affecting the bottom line. I think insurance companies are looking at how do you sort of affect the bottom line, which is I think that's the area that we're looking at. And some of the companies, the insurance companies working in China, a lot in Hong Kong, and in Singapore. A lot of them are driving around, in terms of seeing how do you do customer innovation that really sort of moves it forward. And also there are new players to the market in the APAC market that they're trying to the traditional vendors are trying to figure out how do they compete with these newer disruptors in many ways. They may not completely be there in India, but it's just a matter of time before we'll be there too.
Great. Thanks, sir. Okay, so I will just take two quick questions from the audience before my sort of closing note. There's one question from Mr. Gaurvendra Singh. The significance of digital transformation is appreciated by top leadership and middle management to a certain extent. I think the challenge is how to encourage adoption. How shall we get a buy-in from the entire organization at large? We are already touched upon it. I think this is a massive challenge, especially when it's happening so fast, right? So anything to add on this? How do you sort of make the entire organization move? Because there's another question which is essentially saying that how will the distributor go about using this digital technologies to enhance his lead generation? So they are sort of connected, right? So how do you look at the entire organization adopting digital? Is it successful? Mr. Mansoori, maybe you could talk about your experience.
Yeah, I think it's all about whenever, human as a tendency resist any change. Okay, right. And more so that, some of the panelists kind of touched upon is being seen as a competing. And I also talked about that, time has come that humans have to start competing with robots and make them more relevant. Otherwise, they are going to become a dinosaurs of the world. So it's all about, when the resistance is there, there is a, greater change management exercise and probably sometime bit of a hammers also. Need to bring on the table that few things must be done because it's a question of survival. We can't really let the organization continue in a traditional fashion.
Right. Organization, individuals, it is a question purely of survival. There's nothing else apart from that. Okay. One last question. Does India have the required infrastructure to access and process this huge data that is out there? Additionally, what are the deficiencies of automation which can never be solved even if business adopt the best technologies? Mr. Datta, Mr. Lavanya, if you'd like to take that. So do we have the required infrastructure as India, and what are the deficiencies of automation?
If I see the gap, Rudro, having worked across multiple continents, the gap is narrowing very fast. See, there's always an advantage of a late mover as well. And
you learn from the...
Yes. So I do believe that the ability for India to catch up and the ability for us to start leveraging data as efficiently as some of the advanced, I would say, more mature sort of markets, I do believe that there's an opportunity. The challenge is more around the very loosely defined privacy laws, right? Data sharing laws, very loosely defined. We yet don't see those challenges because the regulations are still emerging. But very soon we will be hitting those realms. For example, the government of India's interpretation that the cloud data needs to be stored within the parameters of India, it will have a massive impact on what sort of data design, what sort of choices people have on infrastructure as far as data is concerned. So I do believe that those regulations do need to be taken care of. I do believe that the idea of private data, public data versus private data, the idea of PII, overall the insurance sector will assume much higher importance. But are we ready for it? Yes, we definitely are. The gap is bridging a lot, in my perspective.
Very, very interesting point that you raised. I think clarity in terms of a data protection law is really, this is really a sort of a a roller coming your way, right? Because it's going to happen. Already the US and the European countries are seeing that, and we are just sort of next in line. And it's not only insurance, right? Across all industries, all technology, new economy sort of industries. Okay, just concluding this, a few sort of points from my end to mention what all we discussed today. Mr. Lavanya spoke about the pace of deployment of machine learning has increased in current times. So we are looking at surrogate data for underwriting, personal and public, and the attempt is to figure out how to marry this together. Mr. Mansoori mentioned consistent customer focus has been the focus in more recent times, especially in the COVID times, how we are sort of looking at digital transformation taking a forefront across the business. Maybe a seat in the top table in that sense. Mr. Ramanathan mentioned that machine learning has been around, but it's about deployment and the operationalizing of it. Technology today allows us to automate at scale. Mr. Mansoori spoke about the mix of AI ML of existing processes and the newer systems there. Mr. Lavanya again spoke about the digital mindset is one of the first challenges that we are dealing with. Older structures were not built with the intent of analytics, so data were not usable earlier. But now, as we build our products, we need to build it ground up, keeping the context, the digital context, and analytics in mind, and what digital means in the context of business. Mr. Datta mentioned that the co-creation of business, process, and tech architecture is critical for collaboration to work across the company. This was a question essentially on collaboration of different verticals, and is it happening or not, and is that a challenge? We had a poll where many of our audiences said that was the biggest sort of issue or challenge out there. Also, Mr. Datta mentioned that the availability of meaningful data is key hard data, because organizations collect a lot of soft data. And what is the outcome of that? Lastly, I think we spoke about the plan for the next 3 to 5 years, and an interesting point raised by Mr. Lavanya was building an engagement platform with consumers, which is just beyond transactions, and which is really looking at connecting and staying relevant in the minds as a brand for a longer term. Also, Mr. Lavanya sees a lot of disruptions in underwriting, where it will move more towards science than art, especially using AI ML processes. Mr. Datta mentioned that for Bajaj Allianz, the digital transformation started a year and a half back, and the added impetus of the current situation because of COVID has really sort of moved it into a hyper sort of gear, especially in the agent interaction part. I think that's where Mr. Mansoori also reflected with that. The way agents are interacting with consumers is significantly transformed, a major shift for the industry in a very short period, but successfully so. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. This brings us to the end of our discussion. And at the very end of our Insurance Leader Series, Digital Innovations in Insurance. Thank you all for joining us again today. I want to especially thank our guest speakers for taking the time out to share their valuable insights with us. We had another speaker, Mr. Eswaran Natarajan, but unfortunately we had some technical challenges, so he couldn't join back in. A big shout out to SAS for partnering with us for this series. Thank you, Mr. Ramanathan, for being with us today on this episode. In a few seconds, there will be a survey coming up on your screen. If you could kindly fill that up. This is for our audience, of course, before you log off. This would be, we would really appreciate it. Last but not the least, if you need to set up a one-on-one meeting or download a resource, kindly click on the link on your screen. My colleague will just paste the link on the chat window. This is us signing off. Stay well and take care.